Hello, I want to tell you about the dark secret behind this custom shop Fender Stratocaster. Okay, so here's how the story goes. You're gonna like this story, believe me. And there's a big lesson to be learned from it, so I need you to pay attention, all right? Back in 1995, I went to a guitar show that was being held here in Atlanta. And people came from all around the Southeast to meet with their gear. I mean, probably came from all over the country, but they definitely were, most of them were coming from the Southeast states, like Southeastern states, like Florida, Alabama, Tennessee, Georgia, of course, because we're right here. So anyway, I go to this convention with a close friend of mine who was a complete gearhead, always looking for the right guitar for his tone, the right amps for his tone, the sound and just tone and gear and everything. He was obsessed with it. At one point, he looked at this guitar like, wow, this thing feels great, but I'm not really feeling the finish. Typically, he would play the guitar and then he would ask me what I thought and I would pick it up and play. And I played this thing and I fell in love with its feel. I just felt like, you can't tell by watching this video, but the thing has a wonderful feel to it. I'm not playing it through an amp. Anyway, it's supposed to have Texas specials in it for the pickups. Anyway, my friend came back to me, who shall remain nameless, says, hey, the guy who owns this guitar here, he wants to talk to you. I was like, about what? And he said, well, he noticed that you like the guitar and he really likes your bass. Before we went to the guitar show, my friend had convinced me to bring this Pedulla fretless bass with me because I wasn't really playing it. Nobody seemed to want to see me with it in a band. And he had basically said, you know, you should take it over there and you might find something that you like, and you know, you could probably either sell it or get a decent amount of money for it or do something. So the guy says, I really like that Pedulla you have. Would you like to do an even swap for this custom shop Fender Stratocaster? And I said, wow, I don't know, let me think about it. And my friend was like, dude, you should do it. The only thing I don't like about it is the finish, but he says, I can tell you don't care about that. You're not gonna use it on stage, you're just gonna use it to track. So to use it in the studio, who cares? No one's gonna see what it looks like anyway. So after a little bit of thought, I kind of paced around, thought about it a lot, and I said, you know what? Let's do it. So I made an even swap. This custom shop Fender Stratocaster for the fretless bass. Later on that night, I could not even sleep. I felt like I had betrayed an old friend or sold someone out. I couldn't live with myself after doing it. So the very next day I called the shop and I told the guy that I traded with, I said, look, I like the guitar a lot. I'm not asking you to trade back, but I want a fair price for my bass. I want to buy it back from you because I don't want to get rid of it. And he said, all right. He said $1,000 and it's yours. So I got in the car with a close friend of mine, another close friend of mine, and we drove to Dothan, Alabama, and I bought this bass back because I felt so bad. First of all, this is the first brand new bass I ever owned. The first bass that no one else had ever owned before me. I used this method called layaway because I was too poor to afford to buy a bass like this brand new. I remember this bass set me back somewhere in the ballpark of $1,200, a little bit over, close to $1,300. It set me back, and I went and put some money down on it so they would hold it, and I worked religiously to finally come up with the money to go in that store and pick up this bass. I was so happy the day I got it. I was 18 years old, and so this is it. This is the Pedulla fretless buzz bass. It is now a collector's item. You know, this is a very rare instrument. I played around with the pickups a little bit, which I really regret doing. Don't ever mess with stuff like that. This has got the Bartolini's in there. However, I had switched them out for EMGs, and the electronics have never really been the same since I did that. Like right now, and I gotta do this. Yeah, I love it. And I love my bass synth, but anyway, back to the story. This is a very important story because it's not over yet. So I show up at the studio before we're doing our recording at the time. Like I said, this was in the mid-90s. And I come in there, and my friend who had convinced me to swap this bass for that guitar was livid. He's like, I cannot believe that you drove to Alabama and bought that bass back. Why would you do that? He goes, man, and he was very vocal. He's like, I really hate that bass. I really was hoping that I had seen the last of that bass. God, man, what is wrong with you? And I was like, whoa, back off a little bit. So then, of course, the way we were, he and I were like, you know, we grew up together, so we were like brothers. And actually, I never really fought with my brother growing up, but I fought with this guy. Like, I fought with him worse than I fought with my own sisters. And he and I just got into a huge screaming match in the studio, and which was a common occurrence. Me and this guy, we went on to play in several bands together. We did several recordings together, and now he is a multi-Grammy winning producer, and I'm proud of him. I really am. I am very, very happy for him. I am proud of his success. For me, it makes me feel like I wasn't such a failure because I was part of his path to success. Does that make any sense? So if any of you musicians are out there, if you have any resentment toward former bandmates or musicians who got further than you did, that's just not a good way to look at things in life. I think that's a very, very selfish way to be, personally. All that aside, as I was preparing to make a video, November 14th rolled around, which was the 28-year anniversary of me owning this bass, and I was like, man, I'm gonna do this video and I'm gonna talk about how I lost my mind and traded this bass for this guitar and went back and got it, but ended up with a really good guitar in the process. Well, I decided to do a little bit of research into the serial number. Back then, my friend, who shall remain nameless, he was really into gear, like I said, and he knew gear. He could spot anything, like he was really good at looking at something very quickly, and he knew whether or not it was worth his time. Anyway, as you can see, it says custom shop. It's got a custom shop plate. Well, guess what? It's not a custom shop Strat. It is indeed a fake. And this particular finish, which I would argue with people all day long because the guy told me, oh, it's not necessarily pink, it's sparkle burgundy mist. And I put this on there a long time ago, and I would tell people to go pound sand whenever they would laugh. And you know, like I said, most guitarists, when they play it, they were like, wow, it's pretty good. I even had a reputable guitarist around here offer me some money for it a long time ago. And I was like, no, I'm gonna hang on to it. So I have to say, I felt very, very stupid when I looked up the serial number. And you know, of course, when I got this guitar, it was just the same year that, you know, the internet was just becoming known. I didn't know how to look this kind of stuff up. I didn't know anything about guitars, and I didn't know how to look at a guitar and spot a fake. But this thing really had me fooled because first of all, they say that you can spot a fake. Now, I should have known right away by not seeing the serial number here. Like on all my other Fender instruments that I've owned, they've had a serial number. But I thought, well, because it's got a custom shop thing on there, you see that? Don't be fooled by that. Don't be fooled. So you see all that custom shop USA stuff. So let me get into what it takes to understand or how to spot a fake, okay? Because there's a lot of videos out there that I've watched, and there's a lot of guys talking about how to spot a fake, and none of them are talking about a phony custom shop Fender Strat like this. None of them are talking about this. So this video is valid. So first of all, as far as I know, this serial number should not be on the back plate. It should be right up here on the headstock, right underneath. But as you can see, it just says Fender Stratocaster and that's it. There should be a serial number right there. The hardware really had me fooled. I mean, it's got the Fender hardware on it, you know, Texas Special pickups. I mean, it's a really good fake, but it's a Korean, and it actually shows up in the Squire database. So it is listed as a Fender, as a Squire, not even as a Fender Stratocaster of any kind. It's a Korean Squire, and I have no problem. You guys have seen in my other video, I have 2 Korean guitars that I absolutely love. They're Crafter, but I know what they are. But look, the guitar plays great. I mean, I have a really good time with it. And it tracks really well. But if you put the whammy bar in this thing and you torque it, you come down on it, and it just goes terribly out of tune. It does not stay in tune at all if you put the whammy bar on it. It stays in tune pretty well, but I mean, you can leave it in the case even for several months even and pull it out of the case and it'll be pretty close to being in tune. It doesn't really go, so it holds its tuning really well. You know, they say if you see 2 string trees like this, that it's a fake. So this was a really good phony. This one really had me fooled. But another friend of mine said, well, maybe so-and-so didn't know it was a fake. And I'm like, there's no way that guy didn't know. This guy has had all the time in the world. He was getting guitars and looking at guitars when I met him, before I even started playing like guitars seriously. And I met him when he was 12 years old, I was 13. And this guy had tons of gear. His parents got him all kinds of stuff. So he spent a lot of time working on his craft. Like I said, that's not to take anything away from this guy. You can have someone make things available for you financially, but if you don't have any skill or any talent, it doesn't mean anything. And this guy has skill, he has talent. Otherwise, he wouldn't have Grammys to his credit. I wouldn't have played in all the bands that I played with him, but I learned a lot from him. He taught me a lot of stuff. And this is a good lesson that he taught me, really. I'm not mad at him. If he happens to see this video, which I highly doubt he will, dude, I want you to know I love you. You've given me a lot of great opportunities as a musician. You and I have a lot of parallels, so I don't hold it against you. And I mainly don't hold it against you because of this. So, as you guys know, I love this bass. Well, that same friend of mine got this bass for me. He had a really good relationship with this guy who owned a vintage guitar shop and had a lot of vintage instruments in there. Actually, he also hooked me up with a Moog. Yes, it's called a Moog. It's not a Moog. It's in pristine condition, and I think there was only 750 of them made that are in existence. This is like a keytar version of the Moog, but it has everything that a normal Moog would have and then some. It is very, very cool. He also hooked me up with that. I'll show that to you in another video when we talk about keyboards. But this bass, this was the last recording I did with this friend of mine, and I showed up in the studio. I had tracked at least, let's say, 6 or 7 songs on the album with a different bass, a 1968 P bass that he had found for me. I walk in the studio, and it was my 27th birthday, and he says, go in the vocal room, there's something for you in there. And I walk in there, and lo and behold, this thing is sitting in there, and as you can see, there's a serial underneath. The first thing we tracked with this bass was this song, and I played through a Sans amp distortion, and it was a... manages to work out some deal with the guy, and I swapped out my 68 P bass and didn't really do much of anything else and got it. And you know, like I said, this same guy, not only did he connect me and hook me up with some really good gear, he always did what he could to help me in the music world. Like after we stopped playing together and went our separate ways, and it wasn't because we were fighting or anything, it was just the business. He got me a great audition, and I blew the audition, but not because I didn't play well enough. I actually blew it because I chose to change my audition time and moved it to later in the week so that I could handle some things at work before flying out to LA. I know, what an idiotic thing to do. I know, I feel really stupid for doing that. So by the time I showed up for the audition, this guy had already selected his bassist and wasn't even there. So I flew out there to LA for kind of for nothing in a way. I mean, I had a good time while I was out there, but yeah, that was kind of a big letdown. But yeah, back to that instrument there. I would feel even worse today if I would have left my Pedulla and let it go to wherever it went in Alabama and somebody else would have picked it up. Because to some degree, I'm a little bit bothered by selling my Ken Smith 6-string bass. When you work really hard for something, you have a connection to it, you know? That's why I won't let go of the Ibanez Proline Series bass I have. It was my first bass, and you know, my dad gave me $150 on Christmas Day, which was what I was short by to get that bass. And I'll never forget that. There's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that goes into everything I own in this life, you know, and I've had a little bit of help along the way, but everything that I own, I've had to work for it. I've had to earn it, and I've had to earn it big time. Fortunately, I haven't had to do anything that unethical to get any of the gear that I have, but I've had to work really hard for it, and that's why I'm glad that I still have this beautiful emerald green fretless bass, because I think it's a wonderful bass, and I'm not ashamed of it at all. And to some degree, I'm not ashamed of that guitar either. Yeah, I know it's more appealing if you were in Poison or something, if you were CC DeVille, but I could always sand it down, and I can make that a good guitar. But you should always look out for stuff like that. There's a lot of fakes out there, and this is what kind of changed my mindset about buying guitars. Like, I paid, the most money I ever paid for an instrument was for the Ken Smith 6-string bass. I paid almost $2,500, yeah, it was like $2,500 for that bass almost, after tax. And I worked like you would not believe to earn the money to pay for that bass. I took a little bit of a loss when I sold it. Sometimes I think about that bass now, and I actually wish I had a 4-string Ken Smith bass. It's just that every bass has its use. Like, this bass is a great rock and roll bass. This is a great bass to pick. Like, if you have, you know, a pick and you like get in that thing and yeah, the whole point to this video is you can't believe everything you see out there. Think twice before you spend a lot of money on an instrument just because it's like like a vintage instrument like this. This is a vintage instrument. You can tell it's the real deal. But a few months down the road of showing this bass to people, they looked at it and they're like, well, one guy says, I'm gonna tell you something. He's like, there is no way that this neck matches this body. So, like I said, nothing against my friend, but this guy, he's like, I know basses, I know Fender stuff really well. He says, you have a very unique instrument here. It's amazing. He says, but the body, he says, the plate says that it could be a 70s instrument. He says, but the body's so light. I've never picked up a lighter bass. He says, the neck is definitely a 1962 neck. This bass is a 1966 P bass. That's what it was sold to me as. He says, but this neck, it's 1962. And he said something about the serial number here because it's a little tricky. Anyway, I'm gonna wrap this video up. It's gotten way too long. So once again, I didn't have to come out of too much money because like I said, the guy did me a solid and let me swap out a 1968 P bass for it. This bass is way better than that 68. Like, it just blows the 68 away. It's a journey when you start playing music and you get out there and collaborate with other musicians and get on the road. You're gonna go through a lot of gear. Okay, I gotta make this quick because I'm not supposed to be doing any filming right now, so I'm giving you this update from the closet. I stand corrected. I totally didn't plan this. I promise you, this was not supposed to be a clickbait video. I just got an email from Fender confirming that my Fender Stratocaster is indeed a custom shop Stratocaster. So all that work I did on this video, editing it and telling the story and everything, only to find out the guitar is actually a custom shop Fender Stratocaster. And the only thing I have to add to that is I did some looking around and found this forum, and this guy was talking about the exact same situation as well, not the exact same situation, similar situation where he bought a used custom shop Fender Stratocaster, posted pictures of it, and some people gave him their opinions, and they said, you know, I think it really is a custom shop. And then one guy came in there, he says, you know, you could just contact Fender. Now, the website I went to made me believe that I was going through Fender, but it actually wasn't. It was not a legit website, so I'm going to post that here in the details to let you know exactly which website I went to that told me a Squire made in Korea. Like I said, nothing against Korean-made guitars because I have a couple of them and I love them. Just keep in mind that sometimes you can get tricked. Mine is legit. I will show some more footage of it right here so you can know. And the color, just for the record, is Champagne Sparkle. So very pleased to find all this stuff out. I wanted to give you all the true details of the story and how this all played out. Just make sure that you don't fall into the hype and spend way too much money for something that you can find for literally thousands of dollars less. I mean, you can get a really good guitar if you really search around. You can get a great guitar for 200 bucks. I mean, I once ran into a guy who picked up a Carl Thompson bass. The basses that Les Claypool is known for playing, like he made them really famous. This guy picked one up for 150 bucks. I mean, you can't write this stuff. So just keep your eyes open, look for all the signs. Remember, with these guitars, these custom shop Fender Strats, you need to know that they're making them in Korea. They say USA all over it. This thing has USA all over it. But another thing that gave it away too was the case. It doesn't have a tweed case. It has like a standard American Fender guitar case, hard shell case. And that right there should have let me know. That and the fact that the serial number wasn't on the headstock, those things should have let me know. But I don't really get super deep into that kind of stuff. I just play instruments. I don't really care about what year it was made. All I care is if it plays well, if it feels well, if it sounds well. To some degree, I don't care about the looks. If all the boxes are checked, that's all that matters to me. I don't need to carry around priceless vintage gear to make music. You just don't need to do it. And you don't need to spend all of your hard-earned money on these crazy basses like Federa or whatever those, you know the basses like Warwick and all these other companies. There's a ton of them out there. Fretless bass, you need to be careful because I have a fretless sub Music Man bass and it is, to me, it's worthless. I mean, I didn't pay a lot for it, but I shouldn't have even paid what I paid. I think I paid $450 for it. I shouldn't have paid that. I don't think it's worth more than $300, but whatever. I mean, it is what it is. You live and you learn. At least I didn't spend $2,000 on it. But the funny thing is I actually ended up trading two beautiful natural finish Music Man basses, one fretted, one fretless, for a 1939 upright K bass. Big mistake because I ended up selling that bass about 5 years ago. I sold it, and because I was just sick of it. I was tired of the upright. I was tired of dealing with everything with it. It just wasn't really me. So I sold it, and now I wish I had those Music Mans back. So that's what I'm saying. You gotta be careful. And I got those Music Mans combined, brand new, for a total of right around about $1,800 for the pair. Music Man basses are super expensive these days, especially those. I bet you if I were to sell those today, I could easily get $2,500 per bass. So missing those Music Mans, because like I said, every instrument has a purpose. It has a feel to it. And sometimes you can find one that fits everything for you. And this is a well-rounded bass. The only thing this bass doesn't have for me is it's not fretless. The strings are super old. I haven't changed the strings on this bass. I haven't changed the strings on any of my instruments in well over a decade, and this guitar, I have never changed the strings on it. These are the same strings that I put on this guitar when New Adventures in Hi-Fi came out. I'm pretty sure that's what it was. I remember I was sitting in the office of the pizza place where I worked, and I restrung this guitar with heavier gauge strings, and I don't even remember what gauge they were, but I put some nice strings on it, and that was it. You know, that album had just come out, and I listened to that album in its entirety and just kind of fiddled around with it while I strung up this guitar, and that was 1996. That's it. These strings have been on this guitar since 1996. I'm not kidding you. So, like I said, just pick up your instruments, find one that works for you, it fits you, and doesn't make things hard on you, and just knock it out, and you will be so much better off, trust me. If you guys made it this far, I want to say thank you very, very much. I hope it was interesting to you. Please share any stories that you have. I love talking shop about, you know, instruments and times on the road and just anything music related. I love to talk about it. So if you have any stories you want to share, or you want to ask me any questions about this stuff, please feel free to leave some comments below, and I'll have another video out to you very soon. I have all sorts of ideas for this channel, but I'm just trying to work on getting some kind of realistic set going here and finding a different filming device, but this will work for today. Thank you very much. Happy New Year, and see you again very soon.